Welcome back, Shalloners. Well, another day in quarantine, another caftan. Yes, the caftan parade goes on, as does the content. And today, we're going to talk about a couple, well, two couples, I guess, who you have been wanting to know about for so long. And who's at the center of both of these couples? Ben Affleck. Yep, we're going to break down his marriage with Jennifer Garner, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of insider info about what's going on with him in Ana de Armas. I love her name. She's like a Bond villain. And I know she's in the new Bond movie, and I hope to God she plays a villain, because isn't it so much more fun to play the bad girl? I mean, you know I like that. But before we get started, but we're not just going to talk about the relationship. We're also going to talk about what to do if your ex is saying stuff like, the biggest regret of my life is breaking up with you, but he's also dating someone else. What? I'm going to break down all of these scenarios, what we can learn from it, and give you the tea at the same time. But like I said before we get started, if you guys have a personal question of your own, you want to talk to me one-on-one, find me on my website, shallonlester.com, and click Get Help. Also, book a cameo with me if you want a video question answered, a shout out for someone's birthday, perhaps a divorce, you want to send a message to a fuckboy, I am your gun for hire. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at ShallonXO, where I let you guys vote on the next video topic and weigh in. I really love your feedback, so it's like my favorite place to connect with you guys. So Ben and Jen. Okay, let's talk Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner. Now, what am I going to say? I used to be the editor of Star Magazine. Well, I did, okay? For a long time, I worked in celebrity. If you're new here, you might not know that. I've worked in celebrity journalism in New York City for since I graduated. This is my job. And I bring that up because Ben and Jen were the perennial cornerstone couple. There's a few couples that we would just always write about, that every magazine does, because they just do such big numbers. Brad and Angie and Jennifer Aniston, the whole Brangelina thing, William and Kate, now Harry and Meghan. People weirdly Matt Lauer, people really cared. I never did, but I guess a lot of people sit home all day. They're stay-at-home people, and so they watch these hosts and they're so they have a lot of connection there. And Jen Garner and Ben Affleck, another big one. And I think it's because people saw so much relatability in Jennifer Garner. I will tell you right now that in all my years of doing celebrity journalism, I have not heard one bad thing about Jennifer Garner. Not one. Everyone I know who's interviewed her is she's lovely. She's so present. She's so here. I've also heard very few bad things about Kim Kardashian in that sense. I've interviewed her too. She's a great interview, but that's not what we're here to talk about. And I don't really hear that many bad things about Ben Affleck. What we would always hear is about his addiction and how he was struggling to keep it under control, the toll it was taking on his marriage, and how Jennifer Garner was just fucking hanging in there, They were very much not this typical celebrity couple. They announced their divorce a day after their 10-year anniversary, which, is like an eternity in Hollywood time. It's like dog years. And she's a girl from West Virginia, and she has that, what she is? She's the inverse of Reese Witherspoon. We'll give a quote to cite that example in just a moment. But she's very homespun and just dorky, almost dorky, but in just a charming way. And to me, in the way that Hailey Baldwin is, and I love Hailey. So I always was rooting for Jen and Ben as a couple. Now, prior to Jennifer Garner, there was a different Jen and Ben. There was the beast known as Benifer. Benifer was the first time we had name hybrids. It didn't exist before that, there was no Shamilla. There was none of that. They really started that because they were fucking everywhere. He was in her music video. She was at all his premieres. They did that unpronounceable and unwatchable movie, Gigli, together. But I like them together because they just seem to be the same kind of douche. And I love J-Lo. But you're when you put it that way, I kind of get what you're talking about. I just thought that they meshed well, but alas, 'twas not to be. And so when he married Jennifer Garner, I was I don't get it. I get why he would like her, because she's wholesome and sturdy and just a good girl. She's a good wife. She's wife material, J-Lo is very much a star in her own right, and that doesn't always lend itself to a shit ton of domesticity. Of course, Jennifer Garner is as well. I mean, she's an A-lister, but her vibe was just different. It was very much I want to raise the babies and stay home and bake some pies and all this stuff. So I have to put my hair up. It's 1,000 degrees in this room, and I don't have the air on because I know you guys can hear the machine. So you're welcome. I am bleeding and sweating for you. So I was always kind of surprised that Garner and Affleck lasted for as long as they did. But I've always had a big soft spot for him. I interviewed him on the red carpet. What was it for? I was trying to think. I think it was for The Town. I want to say it was for The Town. But he was, I mean, so charming, so nice, so charming, flirty, winky. And I've had a crush on him since basically middle school. Did they ever show you The Voyage of the Mimi in middle school? Like, it's about like, I know it's like burned in my mind, but it was like this sort of like show about the sea. It was like an instructional show, and it was hosted by like 13-year-old Ben Affleck. And I was like, who's this kid? And then he got famous. I was like, The Voyage of the Mimi. And that's what I like interviewed him about. He's like, I can't believe you remember that. I'm like, oh, I would never let you forget it. But I remember when I interviewed him, he smelled like alcohol. And like, who gives a shit? You know, like, oh no, the celebrity having a drink. It's like, he's an adult, like, go drink. Of course, we didn't really know like where this was going to go. He's had a lot of addiction issues, several stints in rehab. And I think Jennifer Garner just got sick and tired of being sick and tired of having 4 kids, right? They've got 3 she gave birth to and 1 that she married. And man, ladies, have we not been there? I've talked so much about parent-child dynamics in relationships, and we always talk about Justin Bieber and Hailey Baldwin, right? Because he married a mom, and he doesn't even like really conceal that. His whole management team is like, oh, now we can sleep at night because we know like Hailey's on Justin guard duty. Fun, sexy. And I think Jennifer Garner felt much the same. There's no way you can't feel like that when you're dating someone who's addicted to something, right? And now, this is some tea. Ben didn't just have an alcohol problem. He had a problem with some other stuff. What? Grilled cheese what? Grilled cheese sandwiches? I don't know. My allergy is so bad suddenly. My allergies are just so bad. There were some problems. Here's the thing with addicts. Here's the thing. And I didn't know this until like I knew people who were addicts. Very few addicts just do one thing. Oh, no. No Coke for me. I only drink. Oh, no Oxy for me. I'm just doing heroin. When you are like addicted to drugs and it's got its hooks in you, it's very common. It's like you just need to get high. You got to get high. You have to get away from that psychological splinter, from whatever it is that you're running from, because vices like this, they're getaway cars. And it's very obvious to see that in people who have like drug and alcohol addictions, but it's less easy to discern that when we have just like baby vices. I mean, like, oh, I'm in credit card debt and I shop, but it's not that bad. Well, it's not that bad yet. And no one starts out doing an 8-ball of Coke a day and drinking a 5th of vodka. Very few people start like that. All crimes escalate, you know? And so when you are really in the throes of it, you just want to get high. You want to get away from your emotions. You want to anesthetize things. And Ben has alluded to that effect. He said that, you know, for the longest time, his drinking was normal. And then as his marriage was falling apart, his drinking was escalating. Now, I feel like Jennifer Garner might have a different assessment of this. It's like, no. That's just when you realized our marriage was falling apart. It was actually falling apart 4 years prior to that. I was the one holding it together. You were the one out doing whatever. Maybe she feels like that. Maybe she doesn't. But I know how I felt in relationships with people who were not plugged in for one reason or another, whether they were, you know, there was a substance problem, whatever it was. It's like by the time they got the memo that I was like out the fucking door, they were like, wait, like things had been bad for a really long time, you know? And it's especially true when we deal with the parent-child dynamic in a relationship, because they're getting their needs met. They're getting taken care of. Mama's taking care of everything, and mama ain't happy. And if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? So yeah, by the time they're like, wait, she doesn't like this? No, Ben, I don't like this. And Jennifer Garner I've been reading interviews about her to like brush up, and you know, she just says over and over, like, I didn't marry a movie star, I married that man. This was not a Hollywood marriage. This was a marriage. I wouldn't have 3 kids with someone who I wasn't like devoted to and in love with, and I'm still so in awe of him, and he's the most charming man in any room. He's the smartest person in any room, and when the sun shines on you, it's the most incredible feeling, but when it doesn't, it's cold, and he casts a very big shadow. Oof. And I was like, oh my God, Yes, like we have all felt that in relationships where it's like you date that charming guy, that player, the fuckboy, and it's like when they love you, it feels like you're the one on drugs. Like you are just in this heroin state of like, the attention and the love and the whatever. And then when they shift it away, you're on the dark side of the moon and it's agony. But Ben has been talking about their relationship a lot lately because it seems like he's going on this like kind of tour of contrition. He did this movie, The Way Back, that's almost kind of like a version of his own life story. It's like alcoholic man, torpedoes his marriage, blah, 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 claws his way back, who cares? And he's talked a lot about his issues, #brave, all this stuff. And he said something very interesting about Jen. Very interesting. And herein lies the crux of our video. The biggest regret of my life is this divorce, he said. Shame is really toxic. There is no positive byproduct of shame. It's just stewing in a toxic, hideous feeling of low self-worth and self-loathing. That's interesting. When I first read that, I was like, I don't really agree with that. I think shame is very productive. I think because, look, this is why I always tell you guys, if you want to like increase your self-esteem, if you want to make yourself into an alpha female, the number one thing you got to do is help other people. Number one thing you need to do is give back. It is really hard to feel sorry for yourself because you aren't dating so-and-so or you don't have the cool outfit, whatever it is. When you're feeding people at a soup kitchen, right? You're like, I'm ashamed of myself. I'm ashamed of myself. So I think shame can be just kind of like a splash of cold water that we need sometimes, but I agree with Ben that a little goes a long way. You just need that splash. You don't want to get full submerged in shame because then, just like you're in a full submersion bath of ice, you lock up. You just paralyze and you freeze. And I was thinking about a breakup I went through where someone had done many, many, many shame-worthy things to me. Many. It was very much a Ben and Jen relationship that we had. And so it's like, I think that's why I feel this like kinship with Jennifer Garner. I'm like, I've been there. And I remember like talking to one of my friends and I'm like, I just want to send him this email, just shaming him for everything that he did. And she's like, first of all, if you do that, he literally might kill himself. Like he is beside himself already. Like we have mutual friends. And she's like, also, if you truly want change from this man, whether it's for you guys getting back together or just wishing him well in his life, and I know that you do because you love him, you wouldn't be feeling this strongly if you didn't love him, doing that kind of shame, that like shame slam dunk, is just going to make him recede to a place that no one can ever reach him again. You know, he is just going to lock up. He is going to get just bodied and shattered. And I was like, and I didn't do it. And I was like, But looking back, I'm so glad I didn't because it's true. Like to make people feel that shame truly isn't that productive, right? And this isn't like the entirety of what I want to talk about, but I just wanted to touch on it because it really got me thinking. Like when I read that quote, because at first I was like, no, shame him. But then Jennifer Garner said something almost identical in a separate interview. She's like, I'm not here to shame him. I'm not here to tell him what he did. And there's something so much more wicked about that. I'll tell you why. War is strategy. And war is the long game, isn't it? And man, what shames somebody more than not shaming them? Than saying, you know what? You know what you did. I don't have to say I told you so. Good luck. Sometimes people want to be yelled at. They want to be shamed. They want to be punished. Little naughty kids want to be punished, right? By mommy. So if you were in this parent-child dynamic and you have the chance to like shame him and come down on him, of course that's very tempting, but that is only entrenching you further into that dynamic. It is. To truly pull back and be like, I'm sure you can figure it out. And not even as like a tactic to hurt them, it does, but as a tactic to protect your own peace. It's like, I am not plugging back into this. I am not going to play emotional parole officer for this man any fucking more. I'm not going to play emotional rehab for this man anymore. Okay? I'm not handing out chips. You get your 30-day chip from the Shallon Rehab Center. It's an old Chuck E. Cheese coin to scratch the mouse off. No, we're not doing it. We're unplugging. And it's like, I came in my past relationship that I mentioned, I came to the realization that like, if I have to shame that boy, there's no point. If I have to be like, doing this was wrong, and if he didn't know that priorly, he's a sociopath, and therefore the shaming does nothing. It does nothing. It goes into a void. He knows. He knew what he had done wrong. He knew what he had done wrong. I mean, we were young. We were like 24, whatever. So he was doing like just most of his life wrong, just in general, like snorting Adderall at the Jersey Shore. Like, give me a break, bro. But I was like, I don't need to tell him what he's doing wrong. This is part of his journey. And if he can't see it, God bless you. Bless your heart. Speaking of bless your heart, I just want to touch on a quote that Jen Garner said that made me love her. I mean, I loved her before this. But, okay. Do you remember after Jen and Ben split, that he went through this, like, very weird, I don't even know what you call it. It's like, well, yes you do. It's a midlife crisis. And some dudes, they get a toupee. Ben doesn't need one. He has hair. He is a smoke, by the way. He's like, I think he's so hot. Still, I think he's so dreamy. He didn't like buy a Corvette, probably had him. But he did get a tattoo. Dude, one of my friends' dads went through a midlife crisis and he got a live, laugh, love tattoo around his ankle. And he has like 11 live, laugh, love signs in his house. Like, it just brings me comfort and joy every time I think about him. Like, mwah, your mom won that breakup. But Ben got this ghastly tattoo of a phoenix on his entire back. Like, it was this horrifying spring break girl named Crystal Cabo San Lucas tattoo. We were like, when I saw it, I was like, that can't be real. And I was working for Star at the time, and we were all like the Us Weekly team, the Life and Style team. We were like, we all agree that that's not real, right? It's got to be for a movie. And then one of the photo editors stood up and he's like, it's real. It's not for a movie. And we were like, why? Why? And so Jen Garner talked about it. And she said, she refuses to claim responsibility for the midlife crisis tattoo, the rising phoenix, that takes up her estranged husband's entire back as seen in photographs. You know what we would say in my hometown about that? Said Jen. Bless his heart. What did we just talk about? Reese Witherspoon and the true meaning of bless his heart. And she says, a phoenix rising from the ashes. Am I the ashes in this scenario? I take umbrage. I refuse to be the ashes. She's so gracious. She's so poised. She's so eloquent. But yet you know exactly what she's feeling. You know exactly the subtext there, right? So I think it's very interesting that he says his biggest regret in life was divorcing her. Oh, because look, she has moved on. This is not something that's out there, but she's had a boyfriend for, it was a year, like at that point. It was like when I was at Star, they had been together, her and this dude. It's like a lawyer. I forget his name because he's just like a regular person. It's like, oh, like Scott, blah, blah, blah. You're like, okay, cool. They had been together for like a year at that point. I don't know if they're still together, but she very much moved on. And I think it's really interesting how women behave when they are done. Done. I read a tweet once that says, I think it was by like Gucci Mane. I love all his tweets. It was like, fellas, beware if she stops arguing with you. Silence is deadly. And it's so true. It's so true. And I realized that like when in this ex breakup that I keep referencing, it's like now, like I don't send the mean text, that I don't do the screaming things. I'm just like, goodbye. And they're like, there's no argument. There's no, I need closure. I just move the fuck on. Bye. You're dead to me. Bye. And then I move on. I move forward. I mean, I might fall apart behind the scenes, but they're not going to get to see that. The opposite of love is what? Apathy, not hate. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is apathy. And if you really want to stick it to your ex, that's what you got to convey, baby girl. And it's not easy. It's acting. And Jennifer Garner, she's a really good actress. So I think she hit the wall with Ben because everything in all the interviews is this like, I release you with love. Like, it's very much like, good luck on your journey. I love you as a father. I say positive things about you, but we are never, ever getting back together. And I think, part of that is she was just like completely done. But also because she met someone new, someone who's normal, someone who's like regularly employed. Ben did not quit the Superman franchise, or the Batman franchise, I'm sorry. He got fired. And they're like, you don't come back here until you clean yourself up. And he didn't. And that sucks. Not like he's hurting for money, but no one likes to get fired from any job, especially playing Batman. That's like every 6-year-old's nightmare. So what's going on with him and Ana de Armas? Ana de Armas. And once we talk about her, then we're going to talk about the life lessons, right? I like Ana de Armas. She seems feisty and very, very determined. Very, very calculating. Shades of Markle, but not so like, I'm going to tear apart the royal family and isolate my boyfriend / husband from his entire family. She seems very, very determined to make it. She's got this kind of like underdog fierceness to her. And I think her relationship with Ben Affleck is just so full of shit. Here's how they started. This is what you might not know. They started just as fuck buddies. Purely fuck buddies. She was trying to be like the cool girl. And yeah, we've got a video on the cool girl trope coming later this week. It's going to be good. But she's like, I'm just cool. I don't need a commitment. And Ben was like, great. Oh my God. Every girl I date wants to be like the new Mrs. Ben Affleck. Ben, dear sweet Ben, bless your heart. Bless your heart indeed. She didn't want commitment. She wanted clout. That's better than fucking commitment, dude. She seems very much like a social climber. And you know what? You can't knock the hustle. Great. I have heard a lot of social climby things about her. One of my friends at Us Weekly interviewed her, and she's like, she's very, she thinks very highly of herself. Like in her mind, she is top of the A-list. And hey, put it out to the universe, manifest destiny. But like, it's a bit much. It's a bit much. And she's like, it did not surprise me when she started dating Ben Affleck. She's totally the type of girl to target that kind of guy, whether she's into him or not, and date him, for the clout. So here's what rubs me the wrong way about Ana de Armas, because it's not her name and it's not her accent. She's cute. She's calling the fucking paparazzi on herself. How many pictures did we have to see? And we are still seeing currently of those two walking their dogs in quarantine, and she just happens to be in a Gucci pantsuit. She just happens to be in a Max Mara camel trench, just like off the shoulder, just so perfect. Ooh. Here's how the paparazzi work, okay? And I understand that people just don't know this. And Hollywood makes you believe that there's paparazzi lurking around every corner. They're not dementors. They're professionals, and they go where they are called to go. Where they are called to go. They're called to go. One of the first people to start this trend was Kim Kardashian. When she went on a date with Nick Lachey to the movies, she came full camera ready. And she was like a D-lister back then. Like, no, she was like, people had heard of her. I think maybe her sex tape had come out, and this was like her first real date. And Nick was like, damn, she looked crazy good going to the movies. That's weird, there's paparazzi here. Well, obviously Kim and Chris called them, right? And then that became the norm. Britney Spears would call the paparazzi kind of before she went off the deep end. Jessica Simpson does this all the time. And Ana de Armas does it too. Because why would paparazzi be waiting in a random alley hoping to see Ben Affleck? Like, that's simply not how they work. They're not the FBI staking someone out. They have events to cover. They have other stuff to shoot. Shawn and Camilla, we see this a lot. Like, you mean to tell me the paparazzi are just hiding out in this random Miami neighborhood hoping to see you, and you go on your literal walk of shame, force yourself to do it so you can get those pop shots so that they can circulate so everyone believes you're still a couple? I mean, no. The simplest answer is usually the right one. They're calling it. And I don't think Ben is the one calling the pops. I think it's obviously Ana, because Ben comes out looking just like a schlub, just like a bro. And she's like, outfit, girl. Ain't nobody wearing outfits like that in quarantine. This is barely clothes. This could double as a car cover. It's just like a swath of fabric with a hole cut in the neck. It might as well be a hefty bag. And this is dressed up. This is dressed up. So if you are trying to sell us on the fact that you're hanging out in someone's house in a Gucci, like, painter's suit, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Again, can't knock the hustle. Call the paparazzi if you must. It seems cringy and cloudy to me. And I'm really surprised that Ben puts up with this. I'm really, really surprised. But maybe this is all about the shame. Maybe his self-esteem is so broken down. Maybe he's like, I lost the love of my life. Who gives a shit? Whatever. You know what picture I think about in my mind that is like my spirit animal picture is him outside rehab, just like, ugh, like with the cigarette. And I'm like, that is like my own existential screaming self. So hard. So hard. I think about that picture probably 3 times a week. As often as I think about the tweet, having a boyfriend is like having a dumb son. Incredible. So maybe Ben is just like, whatever. She's young, she's hot. She puts up with me. I don't really give a shit if she calls it paparazzi. I don't care. You know, if this is what makes her happy, fine. My happiness ceiling has been drastically lowered because I'm no longer with Jennifer Garner. Let's touch on that bullshit relationship with Lindsay Shookus for a minute. I know so many people who know her. Everyone says the same thing, same word, mess. She's a mess. Hard partier, exactly the wrong person. A recovering alcoholic should have been dating. And her last name was Shookus. And I can't say it again. It's a cursed word. I hate that word. It gives me the skeeves. It's like moist. I can't do it. It's right up there with that. So maybe this is sort of a correction for him. You know, he dated the really, really good girl, married the good girl. Then he dated the really, really bad girl. I mean, she's not bad, but you know, party girl. And so maybe this is a good balance for him. And maybe Anna is like fun without being boozy. And she can like, maybe she's just kind of intense and keeps him stimulated. And he's like, sounds fine. I don't know. I lost Jen. What are you going to do? But they recently went Instagram official. And I don't know. Again, cloudy. Like the visible nipple in the photo. Not that I've got a problem with nipples. Get them out, girls. But it's just like, it just said to me, I'm going to get attention from this photo one way or another. No one is going to ignore this photo, whether it's the nips or whether it's the Affleck. I need attention from it. And I'm like, okay, like do you, but it just, I was like, It just kind of all adds up to a profile of someone who is very much doing this whole thing for attention. I cannot picture Jennifer Garner acting that way, but I'm Team Jen. So what happens if our ex is making statements like, you were the love of my life. I'll never love anyone like you again. The biggest regret I have is doing X, Y, and Z to you. But then they're dating someone else. Because I know a lot of you guys are in quarantine right now and you've heard from your exes. A new study came out, 50% of people, not single people, not just single people who are also in relationships but simply not quarantining with their partner. So people who are fucking around, 50% have reached out to their ex during this quarantine. And what do you think everyone's saying? How are you? I wish you well. I miss you. Right? We're all in this sort of like pressure cooker of emotions, and it's natural for our mind to go back to our exes, especially if we were the good ones and they let us get away. I always say, women don't have the one that got away. We have the one who fucked us over and we had to leave him and he was a shitbird, but we don't push good people away. We don't, for the most part, you know? We don't fuck up and dump them. Oh, I had a bad day at work. I don't care. I'm over you. We don't do that. We work on it and we plug in, we dig in. We're bonders and we're empathizers. Boys are the ones who have the one that got away. I fucked it up so bad. She was the love of my life. I don't know why I cheated on her. I was so stupid. That's interesting. I'm literally choking on the words. I'm choking on the words. That's interesting. So if your ex is coming to you and saying this kind of stuff, and he's in a relationship, okay, I don't want to tell you to discount the relationship he's in, not at all, because the last thing you need is to be lured into a side chick position and deluding yourself into thinking you're the main chick. But he says, I'm his true love. Well, then why is he still with someone else? You know? People are with who they want to be with. But then the flip side is like, well, if he knows he can't be with you, what is he supposed to do? Like wander the earth alone forever? No, of course he's going to be dating someone. And don't I feel bad for that girl? We have been that girl. I talk to you guys and you're in that position of being that girl where it's like, I think he's obsessed with his ex. It's like, he might be. So if you're in the Anna position and you get the sense that your boyfriend is not over his ex, you gotta dump him. You don't need to be the third party in your own relationship. And this ex doesn't need to be this ghost haunting every single dynamic you have with him. He's got to work that shit out before he's fit and healthy and whole enough to be in a new relationship, because dating is not 50-50, dating is 100-100. You can't be half of a whole if you don't know what half you are. And Ben might know now, but he might just not like that half. Anyway. But if you have an ex coming to you and saying, you're the love of my life, this is the biggest regret, this is what you need to ask him. This is the one question you need to ask him. What have you learned? What have you learned? And you know what he's going to say? This is the fuckboy answer. I've learned that I miss you and I've learned that I need you. Oh, wow. What a compliment. Parent-child dynamic. I don't want to hear that. Of course you miss me. Look at me. Of course you need me. No one's going to stand up. No one's going to hold up for me, right? What I want to hear is, I've learned that I have poor coping mechanisms. I've learned that my toxic relationship with my mother severely influenced how I treated you. I've learned that I didn't have my goals and my dreams together, and therefore I was micromanaging our relationship because I felt deficient in a category that really needed to be on board to improve my ego and keep me balanced as a man. Now maybe I'm listening. We can't change what we don't acknowledge. So if you ask this question and you don't hear any acknowledgement, you got to prepare yourself for the fact that you are not going to see any change. I miss you does not mean shit to me. Of course you miss me. You're never going to do better. I have no need for revenge, as Rihanna said. I am no longer his, and that's punishment enough. That's why she's our queen. So if you're tempted by this ex and this declaration and or these things that maybe he's saying directly to you or maybe that you're hearing, you have the right to ask the hard questions, because what's the motto? If it's fragile, let it break. If you don't feel like you can say to him point blank, what did you learn? Tell me why you behaved that way, and tell me why you no longer behave that way in your life. Tell me about this new life of yours that is a life of discipline, that's a life of self-accountability, that's a life of growth and looking at yourself in the mirror and pulling out those psychological splinters. Tell me about that. I don't want to hear that you miss me. I don't want to hear that I'm so hot and I don't care. Again, I know that because I'm in the Shallon entourage and this is what we do. This is what we do. We know these things about ourselves. I want to know what you know about yourself. And when I've asked this to exes, it's like I'm a teacher quizzing them. I've already got the answer key. I already know what the answer is, bro. I knew that you had a toxic relationship with your family. I knew that you had no career path, whatever it is. I knew all that. I spent half the relationship trying to get you to know it. So do you now. Have you finally caught up with us? Has a man finally caught up to his girlfriend? Has he? Maybe not. And when we miss someone, or even if we just had a bad breakup and we want that revenge of I miss you, I fucked up, and you're tell it to me. It's very easy to get clouded, to get our judgment clouded, and to rely on the most dangerous emotion of all, nostalgia. Nostalgia is by far the most dangerous emotion. It fuels and founds so much of our behavior. I talk to you guys all the time. There was this guy I used to like in high school and now he's in my DMs. I'm like, who gives a shit? You are not 16-year-old you anymore. You're not 24-year-old you anymore. You're not 34-year-old you anymore. You've changed, you've grown. Has he? Has he? Because look, it's called a breakup because it's broken, right? So has he identified the broken things and taken steps to fix it? Again, you can't be half of a whole if you don't know what half you are. And if he's not taking really any responsibility or awareness for his relationship, for his behavior in the relationship and how it ended up broken, it's going to end up broken again. Because people who don't learn, they're fragile and they're reckless at the same time. They're like children. The parent-child dynamic. Here it is again. It all comes full circle. So when you talk to your ex and when he's saying these things to you, yes, set aside his relationship because he could break up with her tomorrow. That's a whole other thing. But ask yourself, am I dealing with someone who's fragile and who's reckless? Is he going to treat me recklessly? And is his willingness to adapt, modify, and overcome his issues, is he going to be too fragile to do that? No, I want to. Mama, fix it. No. We're not parents in our relationships. We're parents to people we give birth to or adopt, right? Right? We don't need to parent a boyfriend. There is truly no reward for it. There's no reward, and we got to stop doing it. And I think Jennifer Garner hit that wall, and I'm proud of her. Ana de Armas, I don't see her parenting Ben Affleck. I see her kind of like chewing him up and spitting him out. And, you know, maybe it's a little bit of poetic justice for everyone's favorite fuckboy. Like, I love him, but I think he's done a lot of women kind of dirty. That's, you know, that's addict behavior a lot of times. And it's not that he's a bad person, but he was acting with bad behaviors coming from a place of self-loathing. And hopefully he's gotten all that together. He sounds like he kind of has, but only time will tell. I want to know your thoughts on Ben and Ana. Do you think that they're cute? Do you think that she's like total clout chaser? Do you think you can tolerate one more picture of them walking their dogs? I can't. And do you think one day, he'll get back together with Jennifer Garner? I hope they do. I like seeing people get back together because to me it says you fixed what was wrong. You diagnosed what was broken in this relationship and you've taken steps to mend it. Because that's what I assume. I like to assume that the best case scenario has taken place in terms of personal growth. But as we know, that's not always the case. It might not be the case for people like Ben and Jen, but it can be the case for you. It can be the case that when and if you let an ex back into your life, it is because things that were broken have now been fixed, both on his side of the street and on yours. Because as we know, time heals nothing. It's what you do with the time that matters. For more, click like and subscribe. We're doing a bunch of videos during quarantine, not every other day, but like every other day. And like I said, if you want to talk to me one-on-one, find me on my website, shallonlester.com, and click Get Help. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at ShallonXO.